We will be talking about our validated training program, and it's nice to see so many of you are interested in learning more about it. The validated training program was developed by members for members, and it's programs like these that help the Institute fulfill our mission of being the resource for education and fellowship by providing a collaborative environment for our members in the industry we represent. We are confident that you will leave today's meeting with a better understanding of the program's objectives and how to develop a validated training program for your company. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize and thank the sponsors for today's events. They are MSIL Joint Systems, Proseco, Sika Corporation, the George D. Allen Company, and Trimco Inc. We appreciate the immense and ongoing support from these companies. I'm going to briefly review a few tips about Zoom before we get started for today's meeting. Everybody is on mute, just to reduce any background noise, and we will take questions at the end of the meeting. If you have a question, send a private chat to Nicole Dayob, letting her know that you have a question. You do not have to type out your entire question. We'll call on you at the end and you can ask the question yourself. So when it's time for you to ask your question, you're going to need to take yourself off mute, and you can do that either by pressing the space bar on your keyboard while you speak, or there's an icon in your video window to unmute yourself. You'll also notice there's an icon to turn your video off in case you have anything distracting going on behind you. And so without further ado, we want to thank and welcome today's presenters, Dan Kane, Brett Loris, and Larry Burkhart. Dan Kane is the president of the George D. Allen Company, a current member of the SWRI Institute Board of Directors, and is also past president of the association. He has chaired and participated on many of our committees, as well as given many presentations at our technical meetings and written articles for the applicator. Brett Loris is principal and associate director of project operations at West Janie Elsner Associates. He served on the SWRI Institute Board of Directors from 2010 to 2013. He's also a past chair of our Technical Resource Committee and has presented at many of our technical meetings. Larry Burkhart is the Technical Service Manager at Comproco and the current chair of SWRI Institute's Validated Training Program. He has also been nominated to serve on the SWRI Institute Board of Directors beginning this March. You will hear from all of these speakers today, but Brett is going to kick it off for us. Brett?
Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer, do the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, just a recognition of our sponsors.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're looking forward today to talking a little bit about SWRI Institute's validated training, hopefully answering any questions that you may have here at the end. And I'm really honored to be presenting today with Dan and Larry, both of which have been instrumental and have very successful validated training programs, and I think give a lot of good insight. Just a little kind of overview of what we're going to cover today. The goals of this discussion are really gain an understanding of SWRI Institute's validated training program, basically what it is, briefly. Get a perspective from contractor, manufacturer, and associate member on the importance to our industry, really just why it is important. And then we'll walk you through the various components of a validated training program. Really, how do you put a program together, or how do you convert your program over to a validated program with SWRI Institute? Throughout this discussion today, I want to challenge all attendees to think a little bit about how a validated training program can help your business. And if you have a training program in place, think about what you need to do to kind of tweak it a little bit to get it validated through SWRI Institute. And if you don't have a program, consider putting a team together and developing one. You want to go to the next slide, please? So what is SWRI Institute's validated training? The program was established really to substantiate training programs in the industry and set the standard. The training validation committee was put together with the sole purpose of elevating and installer training and making it better. We wanted to set the standard in the industry. I think a lot of the experience over the years was a little bit of frustration in that, you know, some of the manufacturers may have a 1 or 2 hour quick site visit with a manufacturer's rep that would classify as installer training. And really those of us in the industry felt like that wasn't enough and that we needed to have a little bit more appropriate and validated training. And we'll go through that and what it's resulted in. In the end, we all feel more comfortable about using installers that have completed an installer training program that's been vetted and it's worthwhile. So SWRI Institute validates, you know, the training program has certain criteria that it must meet. And some of the things in there, and we'll go through all of them in a little more detail today. Some of them require, you know, minimum 8 hours of time, 2 hour minimum of hands-on. There's also, you know, components of it that include safety, material science, plans and specs, things like that. The program must include qualified trainers. That's very important. We ask for resumes of the trainers because we want them to have experience in the industry and be good trainers. The training program is also required to be proctored. And so by proctored, that means the first training session that's put on has to be proctored by someone from the industry, which means they need to kind of validate that the program meets the SWRI Institute's requirements. It's just one more check that we have as part of the validation. Each submitted training program is reviewed by the validation review group, which includes a contractor member, a manufacturer, and associate member of SWRI. And we don't, the committee doesn't validate, they validate the requirements of the program. We don't get into the technical review of content necessarily. We just want to know that it meets that. We expect that whoever's providing this training has the technical content. And each of these validated training programs are good for 5 years. So, and our current validated training programs, I'm going to turn that over to Nicole to kind of walk through that.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I wanted to recognize the companies who have training programs validated through SWRI Institute. So those companies are Comproco, BASF Corporation, and Watson Bowman, Systems Corporation, NeoGuard, Polyguard Products, Proseco Inc., Sika Corporation, the George D. Allen Company, and Trimco Incorporated. So you can head over to SWRI online /current training programs to view the list of validated training programs. And on that list, you'll see their seal and then contact information for each training program.
So why is validated training important? From a contractor's perspective, tradespersons need to know what they're doing. Training is a basic requirement in order to ensure the proper performance of just about any task. And installing work without proper training really could be considered negligence. Safety training is regulated in almost all fields, and specific trade training is mandated on many construction trades like electrical or mechanical, plumbing, welding, and some other trades. But for our trades, the installation of sealants and waterproofing and restoration work, there are very few training programs. And there's very few resources out there to build those. So if we don't figure out how to train our workforce, who are we gonna leave that up to? The liabilities are huge for contractors when it comes to the lack of training. All products and services, when purchased, carried an implied warranty and some express warranty that the products that people make will perform a certain function. Well, building components are no exception, and defective construction claims are probably at an all-time high. Contractors are not only liable for what they install, but they're liable for consequential damages. So if a building leaks, then the damages caused by the water could be brought back to the contractor that did that work. Additionally, especially contractors are likely obligated to pick up the cost of legally defending general contractors, architects, engineers, developers, all their family, all their offspring that were ever born, ever walk by that building will be indemnified by the specialty contractors. So that's a huge liability for contractors to be picking up for doing shoddy work. So not only are the liabilities for the work that we install heavy, the cost of rework is substantial. Even without the potential of claims or litigation, that rework cost, you're going to pick up the removal and the repair of the work, plus access equipment, damage to other trades, and any kind of schedule impacts. So it really only pays to do the work once, and to do the work several times over gets really expensive really quickly. And a real simple note, it's the contractor's duty to provide workers that are trained and performing the function that they're supposed to be on the job. Nationally, less than 12% of workers in the US are union members, and only 14% of construction workers are union. So even when the unions do provide training, it's not the biggest part of construction. It's the smaller portion of construction that's done by union contractors, and probably less in the building restoration trades and waterproofing as well. So it really is the contractor's duty to do that training, and we have to develop our own programs. Larry?
Larry, we can't hear you.
Larry muted himself.
I think you might be having some microphone issues. Brett, do you want to speak maybe, or here he's scrambling? So maybe we can hear from Larry. And if not, well, then we'll have Brett jump in and explain maybe some of the benefits from the manufacturer's standpoint.
Nope, that still didn't work.
Well, I could talk to the manufacturer side. I've had a lot of manufacturers help us with our training programs. And for the manufacturer's side, from the manufacturer's vantage point, it produces better installers for a manufacturer. It creates opportunities for them to improve craftsmanship in the shop and not in the field. So they can make all their mistakes on the mock-ups and through the training process and not on the job. It also shows how to a great opportunity to improve production. So those manufacturers can work directly with the installers, show them some tips on how to be more productive in the field. It also helps manufacturers cut down on their warranty cost, because if the installer is installing the products correctly, that manufacturer is less likely to have a callback claim or a warranty claim because of poor performance that may have been based on the installation, not the product.
And I'll say from the associate member or design professional side, I think we've heard this from all three, is it's about properly trained installers. Really, it's about limiting the liability for all of us. For me, it's been, doing work all over the country in some fairly remote areas. Having properly trained installers can get tough at times. And the more training programs that are out there, the more opportunities that they have to get their installers trained, the better. The other is, we all want to include validation in our specifications. That's been a big thing as far as the validation committee has talked about. Our ultimate goal is to include a validated training program in our architecture or engineering specifications. There's the installer qualifications portion of our specs, and it'd be great under each category that we'd be able to put in if they attended a validated training program. I think there's much more value to that than even someone who's, had minimum 5 years experience. Who knows if they've been, installing it correctly for the past 5 years. So the thing with that is it's hard. We only have so many validated training programs that are out there. It's the chicken or the egg. So what we end up doing is having maybe more of a hybrid in our specification. That is, okay, you have installers that have gone through a validated training program, or you have so many years experience. And we're at that point right now because we don't have enough validated training programs out there to cover everything. For example, I think there's only one, and it's George D. Allen has one for liquid applied sealants. It's the only one that's out there in the industry. Again, it raises the bar in the industry, helps us all limit callbacks. We all don't want those difficult situations. I think too, it's a great opportunity for learning. Most people who have put these programs together, one of the things that I think they've found as unique learning is the interaction between, say, the associate design professionals and the installers, or the manufacturers and the installers. There's a lot of dialogue that goes back and forth, and we all learn from each other when we go through these programs. I've been through some of them myself, and I find that I've learned a lot from some of the installers that, there are things that I've learned that help me in my business. We all learn from each other. And last, of course, SWRI Institute is all about developing industry relationships. It's really good for all our members to collaborate, get together. It's all about, for me, it's all about when problems arise, we all have them, that we have the people that we have those relationships with. I can pick up the phone and call someone, and if you have that existing relationship, they're going to be much more willing to help out. So it's one more thing that these training programs do is get us all together and develop relationships.
Testing. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Larry.
I can hear you.
Thank God.
He's back.
Thanks for filling in for me there, guys.
So creating a training program, where do you start? You start by assigning someone in your firm to champion the cause. It may be you. It may be somebody else. And it may be a team. A team approach is better than just one person, but somebody has to take responsibility to carry the torch and push it across the finish line. You can use the outline on the application for validation, but you don't have to follow the checklist exactly. So you can take things out of order as long as you cover all the components of the validated training program. Doesn't have to be any specific order. And you could break it up to where maybe you're not doing 2 hours of training at a time. You break it up into 30-minute segments, or however fits the subject matter that you're teaching. Chunk it down in smaller components. When you design the training program, let's say you're going to start out with the safety portion first, or the plans and specs portion first. Take that and complete it, and then move on to the next section. Don't think about the full 8-hour program as a program in totality. Break it down into smaller parts. It's easier to build. Involve some other SWRI members to help you out. The best teams include contractors, manufacturers, and associate members. You'll find that we have found that manufacturers have been awesome about loaning us their expertise, and then having design professionals involved too to make sure it's hitting the mark. They tend to be more clean about what is required and following instructions than a lot of folks. So I love having the associate members, the design professionals involved in the training process. Follow the checklist and write down any clarifications in your submittal, so that when you're reviewing it to the committee with the committee upon submission, they'll be able to answer any questions, and they can walk through your submission with you. Don't be afraid to ask any help or any input on sections. You can also get with somebody else that's put together a validated training program and ask them, or email them and say, hey, how did you handle this? Or where did you find the resource materials for sealants? And you can find a lot of industry professionals that have developed these training programs that will be glad to help you. And some people have already put together some pretty good training programs, and maybe they just need a small tweak. There have been people manufacturers that said they didn't know how to do the safety portion. So they might reach out to a contractor and say, how did you put your safety portion, and how does that fit into my program? So that's a great way to approach creating the program. And of course, when you're all done with it, having that proctor really helps you out quite a bit too, because that proctor is going to want to go through and make sure that you have all the program components in the program before you teach it.
All right, so let's talk a little bit, how do you get your training program validated? If you have your program put together, an outline of that program, I'd suggest you go through what is called the agreement and the registration form. It gives a lot of good information. So how do you get there? On the SWRI or on the SWRIonline.org on the website, there's validate submission. And you can see here on the screen, it shows you where it is, and you can click the validated training program agreement and registration form for more information. Here's a little clip of the validated, the submission form that you need to fill out. One key element here is the CSI code, which is here in the box. It's important to list out what CSI code we track them that way, and where they go within the specifications. One of the most important things is the agenda or the checklist, and this here checklist is part of the application. We ask that you follow this. It is put in this way just so that we can, as reviewers, can review all the different components. Again, as Dan said, you don't have to put your program together exactly in this order, but it needs to have all of these components. But it's very critical to start out with this agenda or checklist. We really, as a reviewer, we want an agenda and have durations. It's a full 8-hour program. You need to show where each of the durations are. They could be 15-minute increments and have multiple portions, but we need to know where those are. That's one of our main functions, is to show that it's at least 8 hours, and we feel there's enough information in there to present in 8 hours. So we need to have you shown that up front. So now we'll go through each portion between Larry, Dan, and I about each portion or each one of these items on the checklist, just to give you a little bit further insight. So I'll start out with the overview. Really, we want an overview of the product or the task that you're being trained on. I'd say most of it is give a little bit of history about it, maybe some basic chemistry. Most of these are installers. They don't need to know everything, but give them a little background. Talk about the application. How does it fit into building use? Maybe some of the limitations of a product, let's say. How and when maybe something is used. Maybe what are some of the interface details and things that you may come upon. Just big picture, give an overview of the product.
For the safety portion, a lot of folks struggle with the safety portion of their training program. There's certainly plenty of OSHA regulations that address specific training for each scope of work. And this really isn't supposed to be a confined space or fall protection or scaffold building portion that you plug into this. Each scope of work that you do, whether it's installing sealants or masonry restoration or waterproofing, has specific risk associated with those tasks. So one of the ways you can approach it is to put together a job hazard analysis or a site-specific safety plan for this specific scope of work. So, for instance, sheet membrane waterproofing, you'd be touching on flammable liquids, trenching and shoring, confined space, ladder safety, hazard communication, lifting, things like that that are involved in doing that scope of work. And then what kind of personal protective equipment and maybe some engineering controls that would keep people safe when they're doing that scope of work. So that's one way to do it. You can also use local organizations like ABC, AGC. If you have an American Subcontractors Association that has a strong safety component, they might be willing to help you with that safety portion of your program. There's also American Society for Safety Engineers, ASSE, is very good with helping with these programs. So it takes an hour. There are some people that have broken it up into certain portions, maybe separating it out to the different activities, whether it's prep work or patching or cleanup or whatever. Some of the safety portions have been taken in smaller chunks, not just the full hour.
Okay, I hope everybody can still hear me. The
We can.
program requirement for material science, it's important that the training educate the attendees on some technical aspect of the topic being covered. Not that someone needs to be an expert after they attend. However, someone completing a course would be more knowledgeable on the topic after attending. Reviewing product chemistry can be a key here. An example is in the masonry restoration course currently offered. We discuss color matching in several different ways. Without getting too far into the weeds, we discuss the science of color and how it's perceived in different lights. Many examples of texture are given, showing how repairs that are finished with different tools create different colors, even though the same mortar formulation is used. In other words, the science of the way light is reflected from different textures changes the overall color of the repair.
So visual demonstrations, that could come a number of ways. You can do show and tell. You can have a video. Our sealant installation visual demonstration is actually the SWRI video. We show that, and that's about an hour long, a little longer for the Spanish version. You can use PowerPoint presentations, or you can use a collection of all three different types of presentation formats. So you can have samples, you can have somebody demonstrating how to do the install before the hands-on. All that would be part of that visual demonstration.
All right, next is plans and specifications. Really, we're not trying to have the installer have a full understanding of all the nuances of plans and specs. However, we do expect that they can read the plans specifically related to this task or product. Show them some sample details, maybe show them a plan, elevation, and associated details. Maybe more could be incorporated into some of the QC program or part of the training as well. Really consider some of the interface details, what conflicts are out there, how do these products interact with other things that are going on the project. Another great one is to review the product data sheets. I'd say that's probably the most common that people put in. I'll just say that, as a reviewer, please note that we don't just accept an hour-long review of product data sheets. That's really not acceptable, nor does anybody want to read a product data sheet for an hour. So just, it doesn't all have to be completed at one time, as Dan said. If you're working on the primer application, or you're working on patching versus the install of a waterproofing membrane, maybe you just chunk it down a little bit and look at the plans and specs associated with each one of those.
So hands-on installation, the hands-on component is the meat on the bone of SWRI Institute training. The opportunity for attendees to work at the craft that is being taught is most essential to a validated training. I've always felt that you need to demonstrate good technique and procedure, and then allow a trainee to basically do it wrong before they can learn to do it right through practice. In my opinion, this is what makes the SWRI Institute validation so good, because validation structure requires the hands-on component, essential to the training process and not just solely demonstrations. Typically, the hands-on component of the training class is the best reviewed part of the course when surveys are completed at the end of a course. Keep in mind that the 2 hours is the minimum for the hands-on component, but you can always look for more ways to incorporate more hands-on opportunities into the other components, like safety, material science, quality control. The more hands-on, the better. The next one is the quality control component. So quality control is a key component to the training, because installers need the tools and the knowledge to measure successful and quality installations. When an installer fully understands what makes a repair or product successful, they are more likely to achieve the desired result. An example is a wall coatings course could discuss the differences in the chemistry of wall coatings, elastomerics, acrylics, silicones, potassium silicate.
Uh-oh.
Mr. Freeze struck again.
Yep.
quality control. With coatings, some chemistries are typically applied thicker or thinner, depending on the chemistry, and you can incorporate quality control by getting trainees to use a wet film gauge. Let's put one up here, hope it shows, and measuring the applied wall coating thickness at the time of application. They learn to measure a successful aspect of application before a pool test is ever done. This example covers material science, hands-on, and quality control all at the same time.
The testing and evaluation portion is one of the quicker ones. The testing portion of the training program is a measurement of the student's knowledge. The test questions should come from the course material. Testing not only verifies the knowledge transferred to the students, it also measures the ability of the instructors to teach the subject appropriately. Testing and evaluation should help the training program get better. This is something that you should constantly monitor is how is you might have different instructors. You certainly have different groups of students that come through. How well is the material that you're teaching being absorbed by the students? And is it an issue with the material that you're trying to get across to the various types of people that are taking the course, or is it the instruction itself? So testing is really important to make sure that you're moving along the right path.
All right, so one of the other things we look for is a copy of the training manual. The training manual often has been submitted as probably an overview of the PowerPoint presentation that's used throughout. Also, there's some of the past submissions have included some information on how the products are applied, just as a reinforcement. And some even manufacturers even have them as applications or training videos. So the training manual is important just as a takeaway for the attendees. The copy of the written exams, Dan touched on that. I'd say most of them are probably somewhere between 25 and 30 multiple choice questions. Again, keep in mind that keep looking at those questions and see how your attendees are answering them and if the content is getting put out correctly or efficiently. Then we have resumes of the training staff. This again is very important when you submit these resumes to state who is doing what portion of the training session and who they are in their background. A lot of people will show the presenter in each portion of the agenda at the beginning. That goes over very well, much easier to review. And then we also are looking for the proctor to provide their resume. So we know who's gonna proctor, and if sometimes we understand proctors may have to change, maybe there's 2 or 3 people that you submit a resume for that would proctor that, depending on when that session has been put out. Again, not every session needs to be proctored. The first one, and these are a 5-year interval. And then a list of books, videos, and other reference materials. This could include product data sheets. This could include ASTMs, sample details, reference details that maybe a manufacturer may have. Any information that you can provide as a hard copy or electronic to those attendees, just so that they could go back for their reference. And last, I'll just say that as part of the application, we need to have a certificate of completion for each of those that have been trained that has the tag for an SWRI Institute validated training program. It's important that we keep that as part of these, so that if hopefully down the line we get these in the specifications and we request these as part of our submittals, that you have those available. So we wanted to last touch on here is some common submission challenges. And I'm going to hit it from a reviewer's perspective, and then Dan's going to go through from a contractor perspective or a submitter's perspective. One of the biggest things that is difficult is the safety. You know, especially for the manufacturers, where they a lot of times are not involved with all the day-to-day operations of what happens on site. again, this is a really good opportunity for, let's say, a contractor and a manufacturer to team up to help put this portion together. And I'd recommend that. Again, I've said it a couple times, the detailed agenda is pretty critical from a reviewer's perspective. If that agenda isn't laid out on what's going on, it's really hard to review these. And honestly, we don't know. We can't guess at what the durations are under each category. Plans and specs, those always have a challenge, I would say, with both contractor and manufacturer submittal, probably more from the contractor side. Again, another opportunity for you to get maybe another associate member involved, have them help you develop it, and maybe honestly even get them to give that portion of your training program. Again, builds those relationships. And Dan touched on this earlier, and I want to hit on it again because we hear this every time. You don't have to follow that checklist exactly. We don't have to go in that order. You don't have to have 1 hour of plans and specifications at one time. You can break it down into the individual components. I think the most successful submissions have had that. It also keeps people moving throughout the training session instead of sitting in a room for an hour reviewing product data sheets.
So from the submitter's perspective, one of the biggest challenges is if you don't do it, if you don't have a consistent method that your folks in the field are implementing to do their work, I don't know how you can control quality and productivity at all. So not doing it's a big problem. Doing it all yourself is kind of tough. Most people have a personality that lends itself to one part of the training program and not the other. Maybe you're a good speaker, but you're not a good hands-on guy. And then maybe you're not a good writer to write the program. So having a team approach to how you develop the program is best instead of doing it all yourself. The hands-on mock-up, you got to have the right mock-ups. Our mock-ups have changed over the years because they're expensive and difficult to build. And you might actually develop a mock-up that once you use it, you realize it's too difficult for training. Our mock-ups can take up to 4 hours to do, and in an 8-hour course that may be difficult. So we've had to alter our mock-ups to accommodate the class. So it's a work in progress when you do some of these items. Having salespeople train, I love salespeople, but sometimes if you let a salesperson come in and do the training, they'll train on all the products that they want to sell, not the ones that you're paid to install. So you need to keep it focused on the subject matter at hand, not the newest product that manufacturers trying to put on the market. On the same side of that deal, don't let the field people come and do the training. You can find out really quick that maybe a guy that's really experienced, has 25 or 30 years in the field, he might be training a bunch of people on how to do it wrong because he's been doing it wrong for 25 or 30 years. So don't naturally assume that if you have a guy in the field, just because he has experience, that all his methodology is correct. Try to make it as generic as possible and general as possible, so that if a manufacturer's specifications change and their products change, that your training doesn't go out the window. Let's say that a manufacturer decides that you should prime this product and you didn't used to need to prime it before, or you're supposed to use component X instead of component Y because they found out component Y doesn't work that well. You want to have your training broad enough to where changes in what goes on in the field can occur without you having to retrain everybody through your program. And focus on training, not on sales when you're doing it. It's all about the guy in the field being able to, or the girl in the field, being able to install the work correctly.
So things to think about. Brett and Dan touched on this, but what we mean by you don't have to exactly follow the checklist is that you shouldn't let the checklist become your outline for the class. It may not be best to set up a training where students sit in the classroom for 4+ hours while you review material science, plans and specs, safety, etc., and then turn them loose for the hands-on portion. The schedule on the right is an example of how you can break down the sections down into smaller components and incorporate the different aspects of the training. Most of the attendees for these courses are used to being on a job site and moving around. Breaking up a training like the example keeps the attendees moving and engaged in the training you are providing. Lastly, ask other members for help. I have asked for help. My company needed help putting together the safety plan and making sure our plans and specs were up to snuff. We've also been asked for help. We've been asked to participate in and provide hands-on training and quality control of a contractor's wall coating course. The members of SWRI Institute are there to help and make your training successful. Please do not hesitate to ask for help. The Training Validation Committee would love to see more companies participate in this program.
Okay, I stopped sharing the PowerPoint. And Nicole, did you have anybody send you a chat with?
Not at this moment. Kelly McBride had made a comment in the chat. Did you want to touch on anything, Kelly?
Yeah, actually, I made a comment, and also I asked Dan Kane a message. My feelings that as contractors, it's really important that we're all going into the bids with the same type of overheads and approach to quality that makes the bids apples to apples with respect to the quality that the owners expecting. I know that, Brett certainly at WJE has that type of analysis just for the bid list that makes sure that the WJE jobs are going to have the same quality coming out of it. And then it's just a matter of analyzing, the products and service that are offered. I asked Dan, have you ever had a customer or a consultant acknowledge your efforts on training? Any examples that made you feel that your efforts in training were resonating with your client base? I didn't know if Dan might speak to that a little bit to see how, since he's so advanced with it above us all, what real wins have you had with respect to getting that acknowledged and knowing your money is worthwhile?
I get those every day. I had a national forensic engineer just send me an email yesterday asking if they could participate in our sealant and our waterproofing training the next time we have it, because they're aware of it and they have new people that have come on board that don't have the experience and the depth they need. And they asked if they could participate in our training program. So I also had a contractor out of Las Vegas, a general contractor. Two of his assistant superintendents asked me if they can send somebody to our next training. And that was last week. It's a lot easier to close work, Kelly, when you go out there and people see your training program and how your craftsmen are skilled. If your number's next to somebody else's, it would be foolish for a client to pass up a well-trained contractor versus an untrained contractor. And as far as the issue of cost, I would hazard a strong guess that the cost of my training program for our company, which is significant, is a heck of a lot cheaper than the cost of rework or claims. It's all about, do you want to put your money in the front end of the business or the back end of the business? Because if you don't know what you're doing and you install work incorrectly, what's going to happen is some other trade next to yours, maybe it's the window guy, the precaster, the plaster guy, is going to do something silly. And when they open up his work and find out it's defective, if yours is defective, you're going to get an invitation to that party to fix that problem. So it's so much easier to pay up front for training than it is to pay for consequential damages and attorney's fees years later.
Dan, as a follow-up to that, how much do you, as a contractor, how much do you promote that or show that during bid time or as part of your clients? Do you have a package that you put together with your bids or as you reach out to potential clients?
Well, so we do about 80% of our work with 10 guys, with 10 clients. So they're very familiar with it. As a matter of fact, we do short form presentations for them that kind of showcase some of the tools we've built through our training activities. So our key customers know exactly what we do, and I'm fairly certain that gives us an advantage.
Well, you're certainly in a challenging market. So if you've demonstrated the efficiency and investment, I think everybody has to take note of that. You know, Dallas is not known for its high quality, but you've established another level and you're successful with it. So I think that's huge.
I'm not so sure of that. I can't tell you this. I'd hate to see where we are without it.
JC Campbell has a question. JC, do you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Sure. My question is, you know, we have, you know, some people who do have experience in waterproofing, and we have some people who don't have as much experience. And my question is, would you guys suggest for this type program to, you know, require prior experience? For example, you know, maybe we say something like our installers are with the company for a month or 6 months or something like that, and then we put them through the training. Or, you know, I know that's probably pretty you know, specific to each individual company, but I'm just curious if there's any feedback on that.
I can.
Go ahead, Dan.
So JC, here's the problem. If you wait 6 months to train them, then what are they doing for 6 months, and how useful can they be? If you train them right when they come to work for you, what happens to those guys that are only there for a short period of time? You're spend a bunch of money training guys who aren't there. And certainly the guys that have been there the longest period of time should go through that training as well. But it is a battle trying to choose that cutoff of when you train that guy. Sometimes it comes down to a logistics where you put the training class together for 10 or 15 guys, and a couple of them bail out, and you say, hey, I'm going to put some of these newer guys that are showing promise in that course, so I'm not wasting the training effort. Because you probably won't be doing training every day or every week, or maybe not even every month. But when you do that training, you want to fill those classes up with as many people as possible, since they're periodic.
So maybe you guys can speak a little bit to why did 8 hours get chosen? Why haven't we gone with like a shorter 4-hour or setup? Because obviously that's a significant to pull a lot of crew off for a full day. So how did 8 hours become the standard for the validated training?
We had a committee that worked on that for about 3 years, maybe 4, before everybody could agree on it. Most people felt that a 4-hour course was too short. It didn't give all the components that needed to go into that training program. So 8 hours was the minimum. There are some people that wanted 2 days to be a minimum course, and that would have blown it out for a lot of people. So it was the consensus of the committee at that time. And I still believe that it's got to be a minimum of 8 hours. And pulling somebody out for 4 hours is still tough too. They work a half a day in the field, and then what about travel time? And so if we can get these guys in for 8 hours, it's so much better. It's a whole day for them to focus on learning, not focus on getting from the job site to class.
Yeah, I would just add, I think there were a number of people that were more on that 16-hour or 2-day. They felt that they wanted to up if I remember, they wanted to up the hands-on component even more than 2 hours even.
So Dan, how do you choose the folks that attend this training? Obviously, you don't take your whole company in for 8-hour sessions, I imagine. How do you choose who gets to be trained and who doesn't?
So we've been doing this for years, more than 10 years now. So we have I can't remember, I should know, but maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 5, that there's a retake period where the training does expire and you have to go retake the course. But if you constantly have people moving through it, then somebody that took it last year doesn't need it. Somebody that took it last month doesn't need it. So you continually build a staff full of full of people that are being trained. But we started with our foreman, and then we went to our more senior guys. And now all those have been trained on a recycled basis so often that we basically train new people that come in. Normally somebody gets trained in the first 90 days, and some of them within the first week.
All right. Do we have any other questions, Nicole?
We do not.
All right. Well, I would really like to thank Larry, Brett, and Dan for doing the presentation today. You guys did a great job. Also, thanks to our sponsors, MSEAL, Proseco, Sika, the George D. Allen Company, and Trimco. This meeting was recorded. It'll be posted on our website under the validated training submission page. Also, Nicole's going to email that out to everybody after we get it uploaded and ready to go. Our next virtual session is going to be on February 25th, and Nadia Anise, who is with Ferrari Mill out of San Francisco, is going to be highlighting a project. It's a sandstone facade restoration project, and it should be very interesting. We'll have more information coming out about that here over the next week, so keep an eye out for that. And also, we will have sponsorship opportunities available for anyone interested for the future virtual sessions. And don't forget about our 2021 Fall Technical Meeting that will be held in Chicago, October 3rd through 5th. So we're confident we're going to move forward with that meeting, and we're excited to see everybody again face to face. And thank you all for joining us. We really
Thank you.
excited about the participation.
Thank you.
Thanks.